not exactly hidden. Alranoth of the Barkbinder clan finds himself at a loss for words. Beneath his hat and cloak he had witnessed an entire forest shift and shiver into a new shape, glowing with new life and new shapes. He had seen incredible acts of axiom usage. He had witnessed miracles that would forever be beyond the reach of his people performed by the other races. He had seen people race upon water without the aid of ice, bridges, or technology. He had seen those he would have sworn were dead healed to the fullness of health. He had seen the impossible performed as routine. Now he is seeing it once more. Yet this is so much wider scale than the individuals who bend reality to themselves. This is a biosphere moving as a singular being. The sheer number of divergent forms of life within a forest is mind-boggling, yet it acts as one. How many thousands of different species of fungi, plant, animal, and bacterium have suddenly decided to move together? Let alone how many billions, if not trillions, of individuals from the massive to microscopic. He grips his staff of office for a bit of security, and then begins to enter the shifting forest. He is a seeker. It is his duty to bring new knowledge and new understandings from a hostile galaxy back to the clans. The mushroom forest was a place where tall fungus would grow and be easily harvested for artistic worth. This was the soaking wet growing season, the least interesting time of year and the least crowded time as well. A perfect time to question the artisan and learn of their methods, a routine, simple and only exciting if he fails to give the artist warning of his approach. One of the greatest secrets to being a seeker is that the galaxy is much less hostile if you have the presence of mind to warn people of your approach. All he had ever encountered actually. Races grow increasingly hostile the longer a tree is near them. But if you startle them by failing to give warning, then they start already agitated and fearful, which means you have at most a couple of minutes before they have a chance of lashing out. With sufficient warning, you may even get an hour of alien company before things start getting risky. Oh sure, they are apologetic afterwards, but their instincts that rely on the very thing the tree stand to resist paints the tree in a very poor light. As he enters beneath the canopy, the lights nearest to him wink out, leaving him in a small patch of darkness. Of course, it's not normal phosphor. Everything must be axiom. Always axiom. To be fair, he requires it as well, for all he resists anything but his consuming it. The long-leaf discovery of the humans and how their biology adapted to survive without it says volumes. Of course, the fact that the histories of the humans was nowhere near as long as the tree or any other race. When the Tree clans were engulfed in the Millennial War, humans were struggling with fire. Still, this is some fascinating knowledge to take, and he gathers a few small samples of the altered mushrooms, takes a few pictures with his recording device and runs a scan through the area. There is something definitely off, and according to the device, everything is connected in the axiom. He feels vaguely disappointed that axiom is the be-all, end, all of all things. But his duty isn't to complain or give his cynical opinion. It's to gather information for heads that are wiser, but not quite as reckless, to consider and ponder. That the earthen floor is already drying beneath his feet lets him know that whatever is going on is enormous. Still, he can sense he's being watched, and an entire conglomeration of people suddenly emerge just slightly within the forest, complete with a badly mangled air van. Alranoth rushes up and quickly sees it's a collection of alien women that are groaning in pain, but placed on soft mushroom beds and well away from the rain. Most are unconscious. The one that is not is clearly dazed and confused. "Madam," Alranoth calls out at a respectful distance. There is little response, but his approaching any closer might actually bring them harm. "Madam!" She looks his way and starts to blink in confusion. "Madam, what happened?" Alranoth calls out to her. "A target, lots of credits and just a snatch and she collapses. Alranoth pulls out his communicator and dials the local emergency code. Emergency dispatch. This is Alranoth of the Barkbinder clan. I'm at the edge of the mushroom forest south of Halaric Ridge. There is a massive Axiom event taking place, and an air van with 6 hurt women just appeared in the area. One of them is in a daze and just fell unconscious. None are awake, but all seem to be alive. Send ambulances. I'll keep a lookout, he repeats. Good. Stay near them. We're tracking your precise location from your communicator, the dispatcher says, and Alranoth nods. Of course. I will keep watch. He assures the dispatcher as he observes the fungal forest suddenly shift around him. Something else is happening. The shifting is not in his immediate presence, but something is indeed happening, and his staff swings and slams into the lower thigh of a being that was just suddenly there. Ow! Hey! That's not needed, little guy! The stranger, a male, says in galactic trade. He has little, if any, accent in the tongue, suggesting he either studied it deeply to master it or carefully chooses his words even when startled. Alranoth backs up onto a larger mushroom and gets a good look at the stranger. Looks like a Tret, shows little to no fear of a tree-eye. He's a human, a dour-skinned and flat-faced one. Who are you? Bora Tang, call me Tang, Tang replies as he rubs above his knee. Are you a tree-eye? Roll the RR sound a little more. Alranoth corrects him as he moves out of an attacking stance. If this stranger isn't hostile, then there's no reason to provoke it. Just because something is inevitable doesn't mean you should race towards it. Before we continue, have you done anything about them? Tang asks, pointing towards the air van and people laid out on the mushroom beds. I've called for medical assistance and they're sending an ambulance. I need to stick around so they can track my communicator. Good. Good. Anyways, you're giving the sorcerer here quite the puzzle to sort out, Tang remarks. He's so off his game he sent me to being almost right next to you instead of at a good distance to watch. The sorcerer? Wait, I have some information about that. An Apuk cultural touchstone, Alranoth says as he reaches for his data slate. They have a powerful ally in the form of a terrain-based axiom construct. Is that what's happening here? Is it reproducing? Alranoth asks and Tang considers. That's a good summary of what's happening, Tang remarks as he rubs his shaven cheek. There are a lot of other small things going around, but the thing with the mushrooms, that's the dark forest of Serbo essentially having a child here on Lilb Tulelb. This is unprecedented, Alranoth says before pausing and considering. No, it's not. When a Slobu or Gravia reproduces and bears a member of their own kind rather than another species, they simply use new data derived chemically or axiomatically to create the next generation in a diverse and adaptive manner. Tang's eyebrows go up as he hears that little bit of verbal contemplation and then nods. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually. Especially if you think of a sentient forest like this as a colossal scale life form that lives symbiotically with the life it encounters. So this entire fungal forest is a single massive entity now, including the animals and some sorcerer? What a sorcerer? A sorcerer is a sentient part of this system that helps guide and direct it. If we're using a body analogy, think of them like a brain cell. Or more likely, an entire, no, my analogy doesn't work. The forest has its own will and intention from what I understand, but it's allied and adopted, befriended, allied to. Anyways, the mind of the forest takes in people that let it in and lends its power to them, and because the forest is such a powerful and valuable ally, it gains more intelligent minds that want to help it. How closely tied up are they? I don't know. I haven't had time to fully question a sorcerer, but some sorcerers are part of the Undaunted, so when they sound the cry for help, we answer as fellow Undaunted. Tang remarks. So, are you of the Longleaf clan? What? Long? Oh, I'm sorry I forgot to introduce myself, Alranoth says before giving a slight bow. I am Alranoth of the Barkbinder clan. I am a seeker. I bring knowledge back to my people. A pleasure. I am a soldier with a sniping specialization, meaning that when I fight, it's usually at extreme range with very powerful and very accurate weapons. And the Undaunted are, as the Longleaf explained, the greatest warriors of a world trapped deep in cruel space sent to have the first taste of the galaxy? Yes, however, most of us are never going home. There are numerous political divides and factions that are mutually exclusive, and frankly, no matter what we do or did, one or more of them will want our heads on platters. Ah, yes, that's very common in the galaxy, and wars and divides like that don't even stop when spaceflight becomes casual and common. I can see why they made someone so thoughtful a seeker. You're basically a traveling scholar, aren't you? Somewhat, Alranoth says with a slight smile. Before we continue, is it true that you humans aren't bothered by tree-eye? We don't rely on axiom to sense things. You're downright cute by human standards, Tang remarks, and Alranoth blinks a few times as he processes that. Then he holds out his hand to the human. He had read that this was some form of greeting among them. The massive hand with fingerless gloves wraps around his much smaller one, and his whole arm gets a gentle shake. The human doesn't so much as flinch. Wow, Alranoth notes. I had trouble believing that there was a race that does not rely on axiom. Even my own does, for all that we disrupt and distort it. There may be more races in cruel space. It's a relatively tiny chunk of the galaxy, but it's still an obscenely huge amount of space, stars, and potential worlds. Indeed, wow. Won't that be exciting? Alranoth states, and his mind starts wandering at exactly what kind of races could evolve without axiom. Humans are a BMO grade, which is a tried and true evolutionary track, with his own species being one of them. As far as I can tell, axiom is mostly a shortcut in evolution. So there are probably some more primitive but robust versions of other species of the galaxy in cruel space. We humans seem to be one for the treads after all, Tang remarks as he looks over the injured and hurt. For all we know, there are tribal or medieval or perhaps even more advanced versions of all of them in cruel space. It boggles the mind. So much of the galaxy is unexplored, and just the tiny fraction that is cruel space can hold many things, Alranoth remarks, to say nothing of all the things that are in wild space, frontier space, in distant space, or even here where we're technically in prosperous space. I thought this was in distant space, Tang remarks. It's on the edge. Depending who's describing the planet, it can be either in prosperous space or distant space. Ah, that would do it, Tang remarks before spotting a small fleet of ambulances rushing through the rain. Here they come. That took longer than expected. 23 minutes since I called. Alranoth notes as he watches the ambulances swoop in, and they stop just beyond the reach of the forest. I'll talk to them. Tang offers, stepping away and walking up with his arm up and waving before gesturing towards the injured women. The ambulances slowly approach, and as their rears open, numerous women in medical uniforms rush out. Was it you that called it in, sir? No. However, the one that did is socially awkward, Tang says. These women crashed into the tops of the mushrooms, and we were able to prevent them from drowning in the rain by moving them here with axiom. You moved hurt women? One of the doctors demands, rounding on him in an instant. Not me, Tang replies, putting his hands up. Well, you tell whoever moved these women that short of attacking, it was one of the worst things they could have done. And leaving them in the rain to potentially drown? Tang demands on Morg's behalf. Okay, but just don't unless you absolutely have to, the doctor tells him, and he nods before she rushes to help with their getting them onto proper gurneys.